Alright, so after this video, you have an Instagram AI chatbot that you can sell to small businesses around you. I'm Enoch, I build these on Botpress and I charge $2,500 for them. That's actually on my website, so you can go check it out right now, but I'll be straight with you, I haven't closed one at that price yet because I just recently set my new pricing and now I'm actually looking for clients. But at the end, I'll also show you exactly how I'm finding businesses to sell AI chatbots like these too. Alright, now the number one rule that I have for building AI chatbots is that every good AI chatbot starts with a clear plan. So here's the plan that I've made. Make sure you do this every time you build an AI chatbot. It will make building it so much easier, and businesses will actually pay you to do this because then they can see and understand what's happening inside their AI chatbot rather than you just building something super technical that they will never be able to understand. But the first thing I want to walk you through is the must-dos of this AI chatbot. So these are the things that must be able to do to make it worth $2,500 for a small business. And by the way, the small business that I've chosen is a landscaping company, but you can do this for any other small business around you. Oh yeah, and real quick, if you're a business owner and want an AI chatbot like this, but don't want to have to go through the process yourself or don't have the time to do it, you can book a call to work with me. My link is in the video description below. So must-dos: answer questions whenever asked, collect lead information, qualify leads, send information to Airtable and alert the business, chat on Instagram with leads, of course, converse with leads in a distinct human-like personality, be able to detect the person's language and automatically adjust to speak it, follow up on leads who ghost it, log conversations to Airtable, and then also show a full summary and dashboard of conversations for the business to be able to see what the AI chatbot has been doing. And then also the personality traits it should have is professional, clear, concise answers and quick responses. And I'll walk you through this testing sequence a little later, so we'll come back to that. But essentially, this is a plan that we shall follow. We shall have essentially 4 parts to the AI chatbot and we'll build them all in sequence. But first, the chatbot would start by being able to receive someone's message and then greet them back if the person had sent a greeting. If they hadn't sent a greeting but had asked a question, it should be able to answer their question and then go straight into the introduction, collect information from the person after that, and then go on to qualify them using these qualifying questions. We'll start by having a decider qualifying question as the first one. So for example, something like, where are you located, if the company only works with people located in a certain region, because through that question, by first getting the person to answer that, we'll be able to deduce whether they need to be asked the rest of the questions or whether we can qualify them or unqualify them immediately. But I'll get to that later. And then from there, after it has ranked the user based on their answers to the qualifying questions, it will be able to decide whether they are qualified or unqualified. And if they're qualified, it will ask them to send their data to the business, so that the business can follow up with them. And if they do say yes, then it will send their data to Airtable, and then the business can follow up and call the lead. And then from there, we'll also have an Airtable automation to alert the business when a new person enters their system. But if they're unqualified, it will tell them why they're unqualified, and then it will proceed to autonomous conversation, which is basically where the AI chatbot is now just free to converse with them on any topic they want related to landscaping, but it's not going to try to push for them to convert anymore. But we'll get to that later on. And basically, just so that you kind of know exactly where we are throughout this entire process, here are the steps that we shall follow. Number one, we shall start by creating and setting up an account on Botpress.com. That is where we shall build the AI chatbot. But if you already have Botpress, you can skip this. And then from there, we'll move to creating a new AI chatbot and adjusting its settings, plus uploading knowledge to it so that it can answer people's questions. Then we shall go through all these build parts over here sequentially. So we'll start with 1, 2, 3, and then 4. And then we'll move to setting up the personality and the language detector system. We'll also set up follow-up for leads who ghost in the middle of sections of this conversation, and then we'll also move on to setting up Airtable for conversation logging, and then also setting up the Airtable dashboard for the business to see. And then lastly, I will walk you through the testing sequence that you can use to test this AI chatbot and make sure all parts of it work before you deliver it to a small business. So that's the full process we'll go through in this video, and at the end I'll also give you a bonus step where I'll basically tell you my strategy for finding and selling AI chatbots like these to businesses. And yeah, the last thing we need to talk about is the software that you need. Basically, all you need is Botpress, Airtable, and Gmail. Let's get into it. All right, cool. So step one, setting up your Botpress account. So head over to Botpress.com. It's a platform that allows you to build AI chatbots and AI agents. Extremely good and one of my favorite platforms to build on. So if you don't have an account, go ahead and select try for free, create an account, and just log in. If you do have an account, just log into your account from here. Now, I'll be honest with you, Botpress is a little pricey. You can go ahead and check out their pricing online, but you can see to just have 250 conversations per month when your AI chatbot is public for a business, like it's actually installed, they'll need to pay $150 every month, and it kind of scales up from there depending on how many conversations you want. So yeah, just make sure that you talk to the business and make sure that they're okay with it. And if they are, then this is probably one of the best platforms to build an AI chatbot like this on. But on the free plan, you should be good for now for building AI chatbots and testing them out within Botpress before you install them. That should work fine, and you will have access to the Instagram integration as well. So once you have your account, you should land in a page that looks like this. You probably will not have as many AI chatbots if you haven't built on Botpress before, but these are just some of the projects I've worked on before. So I'll go ahead and create a bot right here. And by the way, if it's your first time setting up a Botpress account, you want to skip that whole setup where it tries to help you make a bot with AI. Skip all of that until you land on a page like this, and then go ahead and create a bot. And you want to select build with Botpress Studio. This is basically the Visual Studio where we can build an AI chatbot. And once you've selected that, it should create a bot and automatically send you into the studio. And so coming back into the steps, we've basically finished step 1 since we've created an account on Botpress. So I'll go ahead and mark this as done. Now we move to creating the AI chatbot and adjusting its settings plus uploading knowledge. So once you're in your AI chatbot, it should look something like this. You want to start by just deleting this video demo over here. You can watch it later perhaps. So I'll just go ahead and delete that. Just click on it and then delete. And I'll also delete this autonomous node over here. So I'll just select that and delete as well. And then from there, we shall actually begin to adjust your AI chatbot settings. The first thing that we want to do is there are a few agents that you need to enable inside your AI chatbot. To do that, come into this little bot icon on the left panel, select it for agents, and you want to turn on the summary agent. This will allow your AI chatbot to generate transcripts of conversations. Also turn on the translator agent to allow it to adjust its language and interpret different languages. And then you also want to turn on the knowledge agent, which will allow your AI chatbot to find information in your knowledge base that we shall upload and use that to answer people's questions. You can go ahead and turn on the policy agent if you want to. And inside here, you can give your AI chatbot a specific policy. So things like it should never talk about conversations it should never venture into. But I don't really need that for this build, so I'll leave this off. And the personality agent, we shall actually use that later on when we build a personality for your AI chatbot. But for now, I'll leave it off. We'll come back to that later in this video. Now, the next thing that you want to create is a few user variables. Inside these variables, we shall store key information about the user, such as their name, their phone number, their email, etc. So I'll go ahead and first select new variable down here in the bottom left. I hope you can see it. I hope my camera is not blocking it. And then essentially what you can do is change the scope to user so that it's a variable that's attached to a specific user, and leave it as a string. And the first one we'll create is first name. And so create that and then select enter, and then go ahead and create another new variable, and we'll call this one last name. And once again, change that scope to user, and then we'll create another user variable, and this one will be called email, as a string as well. Leave that as is. And then scope, go ahead, user, string again, and this one will be the user city. And then the next one is once again scope, user, string, and then the last one is phone, I believe, so phone number, phone, and we can have that in. So now we have the 5 variables done that we shall reference later in this build. The next part of your AI chatbot setup is choosing the AI models that it shall be powered by. So come into settings over here, chatbot settings, and first of all, let's actually give it a name. So I'll call this landscaping AI chatbot. And the workflow options, I'll just leave these as is. You don't need to change anything here, but I want you to scroll all the way down to the bottom to the LLM options. LLM stands for large language model, and these are basically the AI models that you use to power your AI chatbot. So you can pick from, let me just click this drop down. You can see GPT models up here, Gemini, Claude models, Meta's Llama stuff is here, XAI, Grok has a bunch of Grok models here, and there's just so many options to choose from. And I know it might look a little overwhelming right now, but I'm kind of going to explain to you how you should make the pick. So you want to pick based on speed and cost. So those are the 2 main factors: speed, cost, and intelligence. 3 factors actually. So the first factor, like I said, speed, is you want to pick a model that responds quick to people so that they don't have to wait too long while it's processing their request. Number 2, cost. You need to pick a model that's cost effective. These different models cost different amounts. So if you're using a more powerful model such as Claude Opus 4.7, that's going to cost you more, because that for Claude to run that model in their data center, wherever it is, it consumes more water or more resources, more compute. So they will charge you more to use that, as compared to using like a super light model like Meta 3.18b, Meta Llama 3.18b, which consumes way less. And so you can also see low cost over here. So it would cost you less. So speed, cost, and then the last one is like power, like intelligence. So you want to pick a model that's basically strong enough to handle the task that you need getting done. So it's able to process the requests that users have. And so depending on the kind of AI chatbot you build, if you build a more complex AI chatbot, you also want to pick more models that can handle more complex requests. But I'll go ahead and essentially for the first one, default fast LLM, I'll pick an LLM that's super fast. And I know that Gemini 2.5 Flash is really fast. And then for the default best LLM, I'll pick an LLM that is best, like the strongest, that will produce the highest quality responses. And for that, I know the GPT-5 is pretty good. And then for autonomous language model, this is the language model that will control the autonomous nodes in your AI chatbot, which I'll explain what those are later. But for this one, I'd recommend that you just go ahead and pick GPT 3.5 Flash down here. And then for the RAG language model, this is the language model it shall use to essentially get information from your knowledge base. So retrieval augmented generation tasks. I'd recommend that you just leave this on GPT 4.1. That should be fine. And for the fallback LLM, this is the model it shall use if one of these fail. So in the case that it's trying to run a fast task and Gemini 2.5 Flash fails, you want it to default to this model. Now you want to pick a model that's different from all of these here. And the reason for that is in the case that this fails, if this one over here is the same, when it tries the fallback one, the fallback will also fail, because usually when one model is down, when it runs a task and that it finds that model is down, probably that model is down for all tasks that it's going to run. So I recommend that you change this to something different. Let's go ahead and pick Llama 3.18b. That's low cost, and what else did it say? Low cost and general purpose, so that should be fine. And just like that, we are done. So you can then go ahead and click out of this, and let's actually go ahead and publish. It will have automatically saved our changes, but I just wanted to save the version to create a new version, so I'll just go ahead and publish. And it's been published, so that's good. Now the next thing that we'll do is we'll add knowledge to your AI chatbot. So let me just make sure the name is correct. Sorry, I hadn't seen the name update over here, but I think that will update when I reload. But yeah, we'll add knowledge to your AI chatbot, come into knowledge bases, and you want to either select one of these formats in which you can upload knowledge. Now, my favorite format to upload knowledge to my AI chatbots is .txt files on Botpress, because those seem to be the ones that the AI chatbot can read from the quickest and find information the quickest from. So it's more accurate and faster when reading .txt files. So if you have information about your business, pricing, any other information about the business you're building for, locations, just anything that would be related to a question someone might ask, start by putting that like in a Word doc or something on your laptop, and then save it as a .txt file, or export it as .txt, and then upload that over here. But a simpler and faster way to do it is just looking at a website that has all the information that you want your AI chatbot to read from, which is what I'll do in this video. So I found this landscaping company in Florida, and I'll just go ahead, and it seems to have a lot of information on the website. So I'll go ahead and copy the URL and come back over here and just select website, and then I'll paste in the URL and hit discover pages, and Botpress will send bots to that website to crawl it and find pages and information that it can read from to answer people's questions. So you can see it's discovering pages. I think this is a large website, so it must have a lot of pages. It's taking a little while. And there we go. So it's basically done. You can see all the pages it has listed, 292 pages. That's a huge website. But yeah, that's done. So you can basically select certain pages you want to exclude from this. I can see there's a lot of stuff over here. So this website has a lot of information, but you can just choose the pages you want to include. But I'll go ahead and just add all 293 and select add. And it should begin indexing them after a few seconds and basically getting information from them. So you can see indexing 293 pages. So that's basically it for the information that we've added. You can also create a different knowledge base and have different information over there. So that's useful because later when you're building your AI chatbot, you have the ability to select which knowledge base you wanted to take information from. So if, for example, when it's talking to users about a specific topic, you only wanted to check in one knowledge base, you can do that, or get it to check in a different knowledge base at a different point, etc. But I found just having one knowledge base and all your information in there should do fine for a small business. Now we shall move on to the next stage. So we're done with step 2. We've created the new AI chatbot, we've adjusted its settings, and we've uploaded knowledge. So I'll come over here and I'll select done. And you can see how simple this is to build an AI chatbot when you do the plan and you have like the outline and you also have the steps, because now we're basically just going off a checklist and finishing things off, and it makes it enables you to build stuff for clients so much faster than you would have been able to do if you just enter the studio and start like trying to work things out when you have a client. But anyways, next part, we're moving to building part 1 of this build. And if I scroll up here, part 1 is this first section in teal. I believe this is teal and the light blue nodes. So part 1 is this entire section. We'll start with message. When a message is received, it should either greet the user or answer their question. So if the user asked a question, it should go straight to answering their question. If the user sent a greeting, it should first greet them back and then prompt them to ask a question, just to kind of hook them and pique their curiosity. And then it should come back over here to answer their question and then introduce itself before moving to collect information from them. So come back into Botpress, make sure you're in the main workflow over here, and we shall start building. So you want to right click anywhere on the canvas and create a node and create a standard node. So select standard node and then connect the start just by dragging this dot to this dot over here. And you've essentially built your first connection. So in Botpress, there's nodes and then there's branches. So these branches over here are what enable you to connect nodes to each other. And it's kind of like building neural paths in a brain. You're building the AI chatbot's brain and you want to set up all these different neural paths. And then inside this node is where you can now put actions that your AI chatbot can take when it reaches this stage. Or you can put logic decisions that will allow your AI chatbot to decide which path to take next, etc. So there's a lot you can do in nodes, but start by just creating a standard node. And in this first node, we wanted to detect whether the user asked a question with their first message or whether they sent a greeting. So I'll basically put over here just detector, and then I'll add a card, and inside this card, I shall put an AI task. So search for AI transition, search for AI transition over here. And then the text that we want to categorize is the user's most recent message. Now in Botpress, there's variables, and variables basically store data, but there's also, you can create variables just like we've done over here. And inside here, we'll be able to store data about the user later on. But you can also create variables. You can also use variables that Botpress has already created for you. These are known as system variables. And one of them is a variable called event.preview. So to use it, you need to put 2 curly brackets, and then those curly brackets, so it will automatically complete the ones on the other side, and then type event.preview. That variable always stores the user's most recent message. So at any point in the conversation, in any workflow, the user's most recent message will be stored in the event.preview variable. That's going to be very useful for us in this build. And so just make sure you remember that. And so the text that we want this AI transition to categorize is the text, the user's most recent message, which will be stored here. And we want it to split it into 2 categories. Number 1, a greeting. And I'll just add comma, hi, hello, hey, good morning, etc. And so those are basically greetings that the AI chatbot the user might make to the AI chatbot. And then the second category that I wanted to categorize user messages into is questions. So question, and then I'll say like what, how, where, why, etc. And those will basically be the 2 categories that will branch the user out into. Now I want this to be super precise. I want to make sure that it always gets this right. So I'll actually go ahead and change the language model from fast model to a more powerful model. So I'll actually change this over here to GPT-5, and that will essentially allow the AI chatbot to be super precise, and because it's using a high quality model, and it will be able to make sure that no matter what range of inputs people give it as their first message, it always splits them into the right category. And just by creating those 2 categories, you'll see now 2 extra output dots have popped up from our node over here, which will allow us now to send the user down to 2 different places. So I'll move this end node a little farther to the side, and I'll then go ahead and right click again and create a standard node up here, and I'll connect this greeting up here. and I'll rename the standard node to greeting, and then I'll create another standard node down here, and I'll put the question and whatever other input comes from down there, and I'll change this to question plus question and answer. And then from here, we shall move to building this greeting part. So if a user sends a greeting, we just want to greet them back essentially. So I'll add an AI task, and in this AI task, I shall give it these instructions. So you essentially want to put in the text that will tell them to greet the user back and ask them how it may help them. So it will do two things. It will not only greet the user back, but it will also prompt them to ask a question back, or say a statement that they need help with back. And then it should store the response in the result variable. By the way, we'll be using tiny prompts like these, giving the AI instructions throughout this build. So you can either just type, like look at the video and type and copy this into your AI chatbot as you build, or you can just check out the document I prepared for you down below, which contains all the prompts that will allow you to just copy paste them from the document directly into your AI chatbot, which should make this build a little faster and smoother to use. So if you want that, go ahead and use it. Just take it for free down in the video description. So it's supposed to store the response in the result variable, but there is no result variable right now, so we need to create that. Just create a new variable, leave it as a workflow variable, and let's call it output. We shall use this to output text and information to the user throughout this build. So in this section where it says store result in variables, click down here and just select workflow.output. And then for the AI task input, let's actually give it the access to the user's most recent message. So I'll say over here, users greeting, and then I'll put a colon, and then once again, we'll use the event.preview variable. So just get used to it. We're going to use that quite a lot, since it always contains the user's most recent message, which in this case is their greeting. So the next thing to do is to output this message over here and get it to wait for the user's response to the how may I help you question. So add card, and we want to actually scroll down to this section where you see a bunch of capture information cards with questions, and you want to search for the raw input card over here. Click on that, and the question that we want to ask the user is essentially whatever is stored in this output variable. So for example, if the AI task stores hi there, how may I help you in the output variable, that's the question we want to ask them. And to reference that question, all you have to do is select at over here and click on the workflow.output variable, and you can then just leave it as is. What it will do is it will output this question to the user, and because this is a listening card, a capture information card, it will then wait for their response to capture the information they'll tell the chatbot. So it will basically wait to hear from the user what the user's question is before it proceeds. And after doing that, it should then proceed down here to answer the user's question. So let's build this next part. If the user had already asked a question, it will just automatically proceed down here. So for that, we'll start by adding a card, and the card we want to add is the query knowledge card. So search for query, and you should find it, query knowledge bases. And the query that we want to put in is the user's most recent message again. But to do that here, you need to first enable this X, which will basically allow you to reference variables. Once you've enabled it, it should have a little gray outline. So enable that. And then you can reference event.preview as the user's most recent message, which contains their question, the thing that we shall query. And we want to store the output from the query in a variable, and I'll put that in the workflow.output variable, and then we shall output that text to the user. So once the answer is stored over there, select add card, and then go ahead and just put in a text card, and in that text card reference whatever is in the workflow.output variable, because whatever is inside that variable will contain the answer from the knowledge base essentially. And now let's just go ahead and test this little segment that we've built. I'll go ahead and just say hi, and it should detect that I sent a greeting, meaning it should send me up here. And you can see I've done that. It has sent me to the greeting workflow, which has sent me up here, and then it has said, hi, how can I help you today? And then if I go ahead and ask a question, something like, what services do you offer? It should then take me down here and query this question based on the information in the knowledge base, so that website of that Florida landscaping company that I linked. And then from there, it should be able to provide me with a response. So that took a little while to come in. It took about 4 or 5 seconds. But so what I'll do is I'll change first of all the RAG model to something faster. So let me just change this to Gemini 2.5 Flash. And then another potential issue that might, don't know why that did not change, Gemini 2.5 Flash, there we go. And then another potential issue that might cause it to respond slowly is the fact that the knowledge base is just massive and there's so many pieces of information it has to sort through to find an answer. So I would then be able to come into the knowledge bases, click on this site I've added, and then I can exclude. You can see there's 30 pages full of sites, parts of the site that were linked. I can go ahead and delete some of these that are like unnecessary so that it doesn't take as much time to sort through all this information in this website to provide an answer. But yeah, I won't do that for now, but I have changed the RAG LLM, but you can see it has been able to answer my question coming down here and then output that answer to me. So the next stage that we want to move on to doing is building up the part where it will collect information from the user. So we can either build that in this same main workflow, but the reason I wouldn't want to do that is because you can see we already have 3 nodes just from doing this introduction section. By the time we build this AI chatbot and it's done, it's gonna have way more nodes that might take up this whole space and make it look messy and also make it harder to maintain, because you can imagine if every month you have to come in and fix a few things for the client or improve your AI chatbot, if it's really messy, it's kind of hard for you to do that. So the best way that I do this is I add new workflows and I essentially use those workflows to organize the different parts of my AI chatbot. It's kind of like organizing parts of your brain and saying this part of the brain is for collecting information about people, this part of the brain is for qualifying people, this part of the brain is for starting the conversation, etc. So come over here to this create workflow button in the top left, and I shall rename this workflow to collect info. And in here, what it will do, you can see it's now like a fresh workflow, and I can now build stuff over here. And then in this main workflow, I can reference it to tell the AI chatbot to jump into this other part of its brain to do the next task. So over here, select add card and then search for collect info. You should see it under flow logic. And as soon as you click this card to add it, you should see that this branch over here turns green to tell you that now users can access this workflow. It has been referenced, and so people can access that part of the brain. But if you delete it, you can see it goes gray, meaning there's no way for someone to enter that part of the brain. So I'll just go ahead and add that back in. And now what it will mean is after it has output the answer to their question, it will send them here to collect info from them. So it will send them into this node, which will tell it to go into the collect info brain. And as soon as it does that, they will spawn over here and go through whatever you build here, and then they will exit and come back over here from the exit. So coming into the collect info part, let's now build the section of your AI chatbot that will collect information from them. So I'll start by deleting this node, and we want to use an autonomous node for this part instead. So right click and select autonomous node. Now, the difference between an autonomous node and a standard node is that autonomous nodes essentially give the AI control over the conversation. They give it autonomy. And so, for example, what that means is instead of having, you no longer have to build things like in case the user says a greeting, say this, or in case the user asks a question, say this. But it essentially packs it. It has full control of the conversation and is able to detect and make decisions on the appropriate response it should make to a user's message. So it's kind of like an agent, and it makes building AI chatbots on Botpress so much easier. So you might be wondering, why don't we just build the whole AI chatbot as one autonomous node? The reason we don't do that is we don't want to give too much control to the AI, because it essentially does make mistakes at some points, and it also makes it harder for us to control the tiny details, such as the kind of response that we want, the kind of question that we want, the kind of logic that we wanted to qualify people with. But we do use it in parts like this where we want to give it like a task. So we want to tell the autonomous node, take full autonomy over the task of collecting information from the user. And then when you're done, just proceed to the next step. And you can also give it access to tools and stuff like that, but that's not something we shall do in this video. But first of all, we want to give it access to knowledge. So select add knowledge and give it access to all knowledge bases. And the reason we do this is in case a user asks a question while they're in the autonomous node, we want it to be able to answer their question, because remember, one of the must-do criteria for this AI chatbot is to answer questions from users at all times. So add the all KBs card over there. And then also we want to add a transition. So select add transition and add completed. And a transition essentially allows us to tell the autonomous node when to finish its task and to leave, because you'll notice that traditionally it won't have an exit point, but you can essentially add an exit point and tell it when to finish and to leave. And then the final thing that we shall add is two things actually, the variables and the instructions. Essentially giving your autonomous node access to variables means that it can now read what's inside them, what's inside these variables, and write to them. So start by adding all the variables that we wanted to access, which are all of these, so that it can write information to them. But first, it's when you add them traditionally, it won't be able to write into them. You'll see it can only read them. But by ticking these boxes, you can allow it to write information into all of these autonomous nodes, which is what we want. And then you just want to give it the following instructions. So this is the prompt you want to put in. Just tell it it's an AI chatbot and tell it the task, and then tell it the exact message you want it to start with. Once again, you can just copy this from the prompt document in the video description if you want it. And then also tell it to reference the all KBs tool. If you do copy the prompt from the document, this won't be there, but you essentially see 3 dashes like that. Just delete those 3 dashes and instead click on the all KBs icon over here, which should then spawn that. And it's the same thing for this completed transition. You should see 3 dashes like that. Just delete that and then scroll down over here to the transitions, and you should see completed if you follow the steps from the last few minutes, and you can click that to put that in. So you can reference stuff over here in this section over here. And once you've done that, you can just close and it should be good. Now, the beauty of Botpress is it also allows you to look at how much you're spending on to get a response. So I can, if you literally just scroll down to this little icon down here, if you just bring your cursor there, you should see a pop-up that brings up what's known as the logs. And I'll go ahead and actually pin this to keep it open. But your AI chatbot essentially uses this and writes down what it did at every single point of the conversation. So you can see from the time the conversation started, message of type text received, then it runs a hook, which you don't need to, there's stuff here that you don't need to worry about, but you can see it skips the knowledge base, it starts the main flow, it transitions to this next workflow, etc. So it basically tells you all that it did. And the purpose of this is you can use this to debug errors. And you can see there was an error over here, and then when you read this, it will basically tell you what happened and the exact error. So that's really useful when you're building AI chatbots, because then it allows you to find out where your AI chatbot is failing and fix that. So I'll actually go ahead and test this. I'll start by saying hi. So I've said hi, I've asked a question, it's answered my question, then it has come over here and said, may I please get your full name, phone number, email, and city. And you can see I provided it with information, but I actually forgot a piece of information, my email. But you can see it asked me, it realized that I forgot that, and it asked me to provide it. So that's the beauty of an autonomous node. When you give it a task, it actually understands what it has to do, and it goes about talking like a real human to actually get that task done. So you can see now it's confirming the information that it's accurate. I'll just go ahead and say yes, and it should store that information over here. Now, the beauty of Botpress is it also allows you to look at how much you're spending on to get a response. So I can, if you literally just scroll down to this little icon down here, if you just bring your cursor there, you should see a pop-up that brings up what's known as the logs. And I'll go ahead and actually pin this to keep it open. But your AI chatbot essentially uses this and writes down what it did at every single point of the conversation. So you can see from the time the conversation started, message of type text received, then it runs a hook, which you don't need to, there's stuff here that you don't need to worry about, but you can see it skips the knowledge base, it starts the main flow, it transitions to this next workflow, etc. So it basically tells you all that it did. And the purpose of this is you can use this to debug errors. And you can see there was an error over here, and then when you read this, it will basically tell you what happened and the exact error. So that's really useful when you're building AI chatbots, because then it allows you to find out where your AI chatbot is failing and fix that. But it also tells you how much you're spending on each response. So I can see it spends $0.0240 to get a response here. That's a little expensive, and I think it's because of the model that we're using to power the autonomous node. So I'll actually come back into the bot settings and I'll adjust the autonomous language model to something like 2.5 Flash. Again, I know that's cheaper, and it's also quite good. So you can see Gemini 2.5 Flash is actually one of my favorite models, and that's why I use it quite a lot in my builds. But that's the exact process that you want to be going through when building an AI chatbot for a client. Depending on how much they're willing to spend on it, you want to make sure that you adjust the LLMs that you're using and make sure that you get speed, you get intelligence, and you also make sure you keep it under the cost or budget that you're looking to get. And then another thing I don't like about this response is the fact that it says, have a great day, our staff will follow up with you soon. So down here, I'll just come back and say, After you've collected to their information, confirm them and say it's accurate, and then proceed to the information transition immediately. Do not say anything to the user except for thank you. And just like that, it should work better next time. So we're done with the part of collecting information from the user. And so if I come into part one, we've basically finished this. So I'll just go ahead and mark this as done. And I'll move this to the side so it's a little clearer. There we go. And next we need to move on to part two, actually qualifying the user with questions and then ranking them based on the answers that they have to those questions. And so yes, we're on step 4, building part 2 of the AI chatbot. So this should be done. Now for step 4, we will come back into the main workflow. After it has collected their information, we need to move to qualifying them. So I'll add a standard node over here. And first of all, I'll rename this to collecting info. And then I'll rename this new standard node to qualifying. Now, another thing you need to realize about Botpress is cards work in like order of how you stack them. So if I add another card here, it will first run this card, then it will run this card, then it will run what I add next, etc. What that means is if I add this collect info card here and it has an exit point, but I don't connect anything to this exit point, it will just move to the next card. And if there's no card here, it will move to this last exit point. So what that means is you don't have to consider which one of these two you pick. You just have to pick the one at the very bottom, because if it runs this card, it will realize there's no link from this exit point, and so it will run the default exit point of the node. But let's say you had another task running down here. If you link them using this exit point, this task will not run, because as soon as they finish exiting here, they will be shot up here, and so it will skip whatever is down here and is missing. So I just usually like to get into the habit of using the most default exit point of the node, because in case I had added something here, it means I would not have forgotten and that part would not get skipped. But essentially now moving to the qualifying section, I will then add a card to send the user. First, I have to create the qualifying workflow, of course. So create a new workflow, rename, and I'll actually change this to qualifying. And then we shall add the card that sends them into the qualifying workflow. So add card and select qualifying. And once that is in, it will automatically send them here, just like it did for the collect info workflow when you sent them over here. So now we can come into the qualifying workflow and we shall build the process of qualifying users. Now at this point, you want to list the criteria that the business you're building your AI chatbot for uses when deciding whether they want to work with a certain client or not. So I'll just say for a landscaping business, they might want to work with people who have a project size of more than 50 square meters. And then maybe they might want to work with people who are only located in a specific city. So let me just go ahead and say Florida as a city. And they might also want to work with people who have a budget of over, let's say, $5,000 for the landscaping project. So these are the kind of people that the landscaping business wants to work with. And by the way, you can add as many qualifying questions as you like, but I'd recommend that you don't add too many, because then it kind of feels like an interrogation, because the AI chatbot is asking the user 10 different questions before the user even gets to work with a business. That's a little awkward and weird, and then also users are likely to drop off and be like, too many questions here, let me just go do something else, or go find this other piece of information, or just try to call the business directly, compared to if you just keep it short and sharp with the specific questions needed, and then you essentially are able to get that information from the user and qualify them. So I'll start by choosing which question among these is the most important, and I would say it's the city one. So if people are not in the city of Florida, even if they have a budget of over 5,000 and they have a project size of more than 50 square meters, the business is still not going to be able to work with them. So I'll set this as question 1. And then the next question that I'll set as question 2 is, let's say, the budget. So that would be the second most important question. So question 2. And then the third most important question would be just the project size, question 3. And then over there, now that we have our 3 questions and we've ranked them, let's go ahead and build this inside Botpress. So inside your qualifying workflow, start by deleting this first node, and then we shall
essentially add a new standard node, and this first standard node will ask them question 1. So it will ask them essentially, which city are you in? Now, something that you might realize is that this first qualifying question is which city are you in, but we've already collected the user's city. Well, since we've already done that, instead of having to ask them the question, the AI chatbot can just reference their city already. Now, this type of qualification is known as non-explicit qualification. You see, when you build an AI chatbot, you can qualify a user in two ways. You can either ask them a question straight up and then qualify them based on that, or you can take data from the conversation transcript. So like data from the conversation that has already happened. So like from their last 5 messages, and use that to understand if they're fit to work with your business. That's what we shall do for step 1 for the first question of qualifying. Since they've already told us earlier in the conversation which city they're in, instead of having to explicitly ask them, we can instead dig into the conversation transcript to qualify them. So all you have to do is start by creating a standard node and connect that over here. And then we shall add a card. And in this card, we shall just add an AI task. And in the AI task, we want to start by giving it instructions. So you want to put in this following the text, this text over here into the instructions. Once again, just use the prompt document below if you just want to copy paste, but you are essentially telling it to look at the input variable to find the user's city and then categorize it into 2 categories. Number 1, if they are in the state of Florida, and number 2, if they are not in the state of Florida. So if they are in the state of Florida, we want to, first of all, we want to start by giving it the actual city of the person. So over here, I will go ahead and type user's city, add a colon, and then I will go ahead and put in the user's actual city. So that should be at user.city. So at user.city. And then from there, I want it to store either 1 or 2 in the result variable. But first, we need to create a result variable. And these 2 numbers will be used to make a decision on where to send the user. So when I create the variable, I'll just call it decision. And it shall remain as a string, workflow string variable. And I'll just select enter. So now when I come down here, I should be able to reference it, workflow.decision. And then once that is done, we want to actually send the user to a different place depending on what is inside the decision variable. We can use what are known as expression cards for those. So search for expression and you can click that to put it in. And then you want to turn off the AI feature over here. And instead you want to type the following. So over here, we're saying workflow.decision is equal to 1. And you need to use double equal sign because this is actually JavaScript code. So you just need to make sure the notation is right. So workflow.decision is equal to 1. And then you can copy that and also paste that on the top as a label. And then just duplicate this card, copy, and then paste it down here. And change this to 2 for the second one. So that's good. So now if the workflow.decision variable contains 1, it will send them up here. If it contains 2, it will send them down here. And remember over here, we said 1 is if they are in Florida, 2 is if they are not in Florida. So if they are in Florida, then we want to send them up here to the next question. And if they are not in Florida, so that's if they are, but if they are not, we'll send them down here and we will basically immediately unqualify them. And the reason we're doing that is if you come back into the plan, remember this first qualifying question is the main deciding question. And in this case, we chose if they are in Florida as that question. And so if they're not in Florida, there's no need to ask them the rest of these qualifying questions because the company doesn't work with people who are not in Florida. So it would immediately unqualify them and tell them why. So what I will do is I'll just change this to unqualified 1. And I'll add a text to say, to just basically tell them why they're unqualified. So, sorry, you don't work with businesses or people out of the state of Florida in the US. And then from there, after unqualifying them, we would move them essentially to autonomous conversation. But I'll come back to that a little later. But if they are qualified and they are in Florida, then we want to move on to asking them question number 2. So I've gone on and I've actually also renamed these ones over here. So I've renamed this one to qualifying question number 1. And I've renamed this one to qualifying question number 2, which is the next question that we shall ask the user. Now, this next question over here is going to be a little different from the first one. What we're going to start with is a raw input card. And so search for raw input, put that in, and the question we want to ask them is, if you come back into the qualifying questions, the second question is there a budget for the project over $5,000? So I'll ask, what's your minimum budget for a landscaping project? Once we've answered that question, instead of storing it immediately in a variable, we want to first get AI to analyze their response and basically understand if they've really given us what we wanted. When you think about the way humans talk, we don't always respond to each other immediately with what the other person expected. So you might ask someone, for example, are you showing up for this dinner tonight? And they might respond to you with a question saying like, where is the dinner going to be? You see, they've not responded to your original question. Instead, they've asked you a question back. But in the process of asking you that question, they're trying to get more information from you to help maybe decide whether like the right answer that they should give. So for example, someone here might ask the AI chatbot back, what do you recommend is a good budget, before they answer this question. So what we want the AI chatbot to do is to be able to detect when users have like not provided a correct response to the question that was asked, so that it can go ahead and prompt, first of all, answer whichever response they gave, and then loop back again to prompt them and collect the right answer. And this is essentially like a fallback. If you built on Botpress or any other chatbot software, you'll realize that a lot of times when you like build your chatbots around expecting certain responses from people, in this case like a minimum budget, people don't always give that exact response, and when that happens, your AI chatbot jams. So we're building a fallback so that your AI chatbot does not jam and is able instead to answer questions at all points throughout the conversation without jamming, which by the way is also one of the must-dos of this project. So let's go ahead and build it. First, after getting their response to this question, we will add a card and we'll call this card AI task. And inside the AI task, you want to paste in the following text. Alright, so over here, you want to paste in this text. Basically what it says is it reads the user's most recent response and understands whether they gave a minimum amount of money. And if they did, it will store that in the user.min budget variable. If they did not give that amount of money, or if they asked a question or said another statement, basically the fallback part, it should just store 2 in the decision result variable. So yeah, for that, we now also need to create a user.min budget variable. So come over here, new variable, and create a user variable, and we'll call this min budget. And then we'll leave that as a string and select enter. And you should see it down here, user.min budget. And then I'll add both the workflow.decision and the user.min budget variable as result variables, because if they were option 1, then it will first of all store 1 in the decision variable, workflow.decision variable. So I'll have to add workflow.decision result variable. And if they were option 2, it will store 2 in the workflow.decision variable. But if they were option 1, it would also store their minimum budget in the user.min budget variable. And then the last thing we need to do is just give it the actual input, which contains the user's response. So over here, I will say user's response, and then once again, event.preview. And just like that, we should be done. And then from here, we can then once again use expression variables to group the user to 2 different places to make a decision. So I'll actually just go ahead and copy this from over here so I don't have to type it again. And I'll paste that here. And this is for if they are 1, it should send them up there. But if they are 2, meaning they didn't respond with their actual like budget, minimum budget, it should send them down here, and we will build a fallback down here. And what this fallback will do is it will just answer whichever statement or question they said instead of giving their budget, and then it will proceed to loop back and ask them that question. So I'll connect the output to loop back, and then inside this node I shall add a query card. So query knowledge bases to query whichever other statement or question they asked instead of giving us their budget. And I will query the event.preview variable since it will contain their most recent message. And I will store their answer in an output variable, but you can see there's no workflow.output here. So I'll just create that right now, workflow output string, enter and select that down here. And then I'll just output the text to them. So text at workflow.output. So what this will do is it's like a fallback. If it detects that they didn't answer the question properly, it will send them down here. It will reply to whichever message or question they sent using the query knowledge base card. and then it will loop back up here and re-ask them the question and try to get like their real minimum budget. And when it gets that, it will store that in the user.minBudget variable, and then it will proceed to question number 3, which should be up here. So let me go ahead and rename this next node to qualifying question number 3. Before we move to the next step, I'll just go ahead and hit publish to make sure it saves a version to the Botpress servers, just in case something goes wrong later on. Alright, so qualifying question number 3 is actually kind of similar to qualifying question number 2, but instead of asking them the minimum budget, it asks for the like square meters, the size of the project, the landscaping project. So I'll actually just go ahead and copy these cards over here. In fact, what I'll do is I'll copy the entire node. So what you can do is you can right click on this node, select copy, right click here and paste the node, and it should paste everything. Then just link this up, rename this to qualifying question number 3, and then change the information here. Change the text over here to what is the size in squared meters of the landscaping projects. And from there, we'll then move on to edit this. And inside here, we shall first of all create a new result variable and call it the project size. So user variable, because we want it to attach to a user. And I'll just say project size. And then we shall add that as one of the result variables. So user.project size. And then we shall edit these instructions to make sure they fit this one instead. And once you've changed all the information here, you can either do that or once again just copy the prompt from the prompt document, and you've given it the correct result variables. You can then click out of this. So once you've done that, you can also just clone this node over here. So I'll just add a standard node, rename it to fallback 2, and once again just a query knowledge base card. And the query that we shall have is the user's most recent message, so event.preview, and we shall store that in the variable output, workflow.output, and then we shall output that text that's in the workflow.output variable to essentially give them the answer or response to their statement slash question. And then we shall connect the outputs of the second decision expression card over here, and loop it back to ask the question again, because this card handles if they didn't properly answer the question. So it will first address whatever they used, their response was, and then loop back to try and ask them the question again so they properly answer it. And then you can come in here to, if they did properly answer the question, it should have stored the size of their project in the project size variable. So we can then just move to the next step, which is then actually making the final decision on if the person is qualified to work with the landscaping company. Now the first thing you want to add is an AI task, because we shall get AI to do to run the logic, the qualification logic for us. And there's many different ways to do it, but just give it the following prompt. Now this is the prompt I pasted in. You can go ahead and copy it in. And essentially what it says is it differentiates to basically understand if the user meets both of these criteria or if they fail to meet one or both. And if they fail one or both, then they are unqualified, but if they meet both, then they are qualified. That's one way of qualifying people. The second way is to rank them. So what you would do is essentially rank people by, for example, how much they're willing to spend on a scale of 1 to 10, and then get the AI task over here to basically say if someone's willing to spend between this much, then rank them as a 7, or this much, rank them as a 3, and then you can then use expression cards to map them to different places later on. But this is the process that I'll use for ranking these users and qualifying them. But in your build for a small business, you can rank them in different ways depending on what the business needs. But first of all, we need to give it the inputs. So first of all, the project size in square meters, and then I'll add a colon, and over there we shall go ahead and input user dot project size, and then down here I shall also give it their minimum budget, and over there 2 curly brackets user dot minimum budget, min budget. There we go. You don't have to use the 2 curly brackets for these. You can actually just use the at as well. So I can change this to at user dot min budget, but I just kind of got into the habit of using the kind of got into the habit of using the 2 curly brackets. I don't know why, but yeah, anyways, that's it. And once you've done that, you can then tell it what to do in terms of these 2 categories. So for category 1, we'll say store 1 in the result variable, and then for this category 2, we shall get it to store 2 in the result variable, and in the result variable we shall use the workflow.decision again. So there you go. Now before we move to the next stage, I just want to do a bit of testing over here. So let me go through a full conversation and see how it turns out. So I basically told it that I'm in Kampala, Uganda, and as soon as I entered the qualifying workflow, it basically sent me down here and said, sorry, we don't work with businesses or people out of the state of Florida in the US. So I can see that it actually works. And if I look down here in the workflow.decision variable, I can see that it stored 2 in that variable, basically telling me that it was able to differentiate between me being from a city that is in Florida or not. And so this part is working. And as a result, I'm pretty sure that the rest is working as well. So let me just finish off. Let's just finish off with this last part where it decides where they are actually supposed to go. Based on if they're qualified or not. So if they're qualified, they will flow down this first card, which by the way, you can just copy from over here. So just copy this card, paste it here, because we told it to store 1 in the result variable if they're qualified. So they will flow up here. But if they're unqualified, let me just copy this card and I can paste that there. They should flow down the second one. So if they're qualified, we'll just go ahead and give them a brief qualifying message before we move to the next part. So I'd say something like, we'd love to work with you. And if they're unqualified, we'll just tell them that they are unqualified. So I'll first of all bring that down here, but then I'll actually copy this card and I shall create a new standard node, connect these all over here for if they're unqualified, and I'll paste that card in and I'll change the text to, sorry, we don't work with businesses or people out of the state in Florida and the US, or who aren't ready to spend $5,000 on a project, or who have a project size smaller than, let's say, what was it? It was 50 square meters, I believe, 50 square meters. There we go. So that's done. And once we have that, we can then essentially move to the next stage. So we've basically done part 2. We finished this entire qualifying section. We are making good progress. So I'll go ahead and just mark this as done. And then from there, we'll move to the next part. So if they are unqualified, it should send them down here. But if they are qualified, it should send them up here. So let's go ahead and work on the part of if they are unqualified, part 3. So if they're unqualified, we want to send them to autonomous conversation. So I'll first of all start by creating a new workflow, and we'll rename this to autonomous convo. And basically inside here, we'll just get the AI chatbot to converse with the user. So I'll just add an autonomous node. This is going to be very basic. And over here, I shall give it the following instructions. All right, so you basically want to just tell it it's an AI chatbot for a landscaping company, and it should just converse with the user, answer any questions, just chat with them. Since we've qualified them and they're not fit to work with our business, we might as well just talk to them and understand what they want, maybe use that conversation to gain insight on what our customers are looking for, etc. And if a user doesn't need any more help, it should proceed to the completed transition below. So this is very similar. And by the way, to add these all KBs tool and the completed transition, you have to add the transition down here, type in completed, and then hit enter. We've done that before earlier in this build. And then you can also add the knowledge bases by selecting add knowledge and add all KBs. And then for this completed thing, instead of linking it to the exit, we shall actually right click and select end, and we shall link it to the end workflow. So that end conversation, so that it automatically ends the conversation when someone gets here and goes into completed. Great, so we've done that. And now the last thing that we need to do is just make sure that someone can actually enter the autonomous conversation workflow, because you can see right now the branch is gray, meaning that there's no way for someone to enter that part of your AI chatbot's brain. So right click, create a new standard node, add a card, and search for autonomous convo, and you should see it here if you've created the workflow. And we want to link these 2 unqualified nodes. I forgot to name this one, so unqualified, to this autonomous convo workflow, just like we said in the plan. If someone is unqualified, we want to tell them why they're unqualified, which is what these two nodes do, and then send them into autonomous conversation. And just like that, we're done with part 3. We've done this and we've done this, so we can go ahead and mark that as done as well. Now the next part we need to actually do is part 4. That's the next part we're building, and part 4 is slightly longer, and it's this part over here where we, if they're qualified, we ask them if they want to send their data to the company so we can follow up with them. And if they do say yes, then we will actually send it to Airtable, follow up and call them, and we'll have the Airtable automation to alert the business when a new person is here. So this part we will now venture a little bit out of Botpress and onto Airtable and do some building over there to set up the rest of the project. So I'll start by creating a new workflow, and I'll say I'll change this to data sending, and inside this workflow I shall come back into main. I shall go into qualifying, and if they are qualified and we want to work with them, we want to send them first of all to the exit. So we want to send them out of this workflow. So I'll put the exit there and I'll link this there. And you can see also the importance, just to kind of remind you of why we use different workflows, because you can imagine if we have to build all of this in the main workflow with these, and then we also have to build this, and then we also have to build the data sending, which I'll do here. You can see how messy it would start to become. So to avoid that, we break our AI chatbot into different workflows. And so coming into the main workflow, you can see that into the qualifying workflow, if they are qualified, they will exit, meaning they will come back into the main workflow and they will flow out through here. So through the bottom one, or this one, but I'll go ahead and use the bottom one. And from there, we want to send them into the data sending workflow. So for data sending, I'll just add card and search for data sending since we've created that workflow already, and I'll add it here. And then we'll come into data sending, and the first thing we'll ask them is question. I'll ask them is, do you want to send your data to the business so that we can follow up with you and start working on the project? So I've basically put in 2 text cards. And just a quick chatbot building tip: when you want information from users, or you want the users to say yes to a certain question, in this case we want them to say yes to collecting info, to sending their data to the business, you don't want to just ask them to say yes, but you want to lean with a benefit, or make it look, I don't want to say enticing because that seems like manipulation, but you just want to make it look like something they would want. You want to frame it as a benefit for them, just like in the same way if you're trying to ask someone to do something for you, you're not just going to command them, but you're going to kind of frame it as a benefit for them. So in this case, we are offering a free site visit or consultation. So you just talk to the business that you're building an AI chatbot for and try to figure out something free that the AI chatbot, at least free, that it can offer them. So something like, I don't know, a free consultation, a free demonstration, maybe a discovery call, an audit, whatever. And then once you offer it to them, you can then ask them, can I send your contact info to our staff now so that they can reach out to you to book your site visit? And once you've done that, we can then add a AI task, AI decision card. So I'll add actually an AI transition, sorry, not AI task, AI transition, and the text we're categorizing is the user's most recent response. But I also forgot to add a wait for user input card, because you'll realize that these 2 text cards over here are not listening cards. They don't have this little ear icon. So after the AI chatbot sends a text message, it's not going to traditionally just sit and listen for what the user's response will be, but it will just proceed to the next one. So I need to add a wait for user input card there so that it waits for what the user is going to say next before it proceeds. And after the user says something, it will go to the AI transition. And inside here, we shall add the event.preview variable to analyze what the user said. And then the categories that we shall have are number 1, yes, or yeah, or okay, or fine. And then the second one we shall have is no, please, no, or no thank you, something like that. And then the last category that we shall have is if they ask a question once again, instead of saying yes or no. So let me just go with question, what, how, why, etc. If they have a question once again, we shall actually just have a fallback. So I'll say standard node, pull that down here and connect all of these down here. Actually no, for the no we shall cancel that, but just for the question and for the last output, connect them down here. And we've already built a fallback before. I'm pretty sure you know how to do that. Add a card, query whatever message they put instead of saying yes or no. So event.preview, store that in an answer variable. We don't have an output variable here, so just go ahead and create that workflow output string. Create that, store that in workflow.output, and then output workflow.output to the person. So have a text card at workflow.output, and then loop all the way back to tell them again that we offer free site visits and ask them the question again. And if they say yes, we shall move up here to sending their data. So if they say yes, yeah, or fine, let's move up here to send data. And if they say no, we shall be like, we'll just tell them it's fine. So we'll just say no problem, reach out to us then you would just insert the business email or phone number or phone when you want to get in contact for your free site visit. Done. And then from there, once it has told them no problem, it can then also just go ahead and proceed to autonomous conversation. So autonomous conversation. So basically the end goal of all like conversations is to end in autonomous conversation. Whether a user says yes and you send their data, eventually we want to lead them to autonomous conversation. But if a user says no, or if a user is unqualified, they will just reach autonomous conversation much faster. But now for sending their data to Airtable, we need to actually be connected to Airtable. So first of all, you need to head over to airtable.com. And inside there, you want to set up your account if you don't already have one. You don't need to have a paid plan, but once you set up your account, or if you already have an account, you should land on a page that looks something similar to this. I have quite a few, workspaces, so that's why it looks like this. But if you don't have a workspace, just create a new workspace. I already created one, landscaping CRM. And inside here, you want to create and then build an app on your own. And once you've done that, it should send you to a page that looks something like this. And by the way, if you don't want to go through this boring process of setting up the Airtable database, I know it's boring. I also hate doing it. You can just go ahead and steal my Airtable template, which will come with the full database and interface set up for you, so that all you have to do is work on the automations, and you can kind of get a little bit of a jump start ahead over the next few minutes of this video. So if you want that, go ahead and do it, but if not, let's just keep building. And now inside here, there are two tables we're going to create. The first table is going to be just for conversations, so I'll rename this to conversations and I'll save that. So when you're building with AI or when you're doing databases, basically in computing, we don't call these rows, we call them records. So each of these is a record, each row is a record, and then each column is known as a field. So name is a field, notes is a field, assignee is a field, and then 1 is a record, 2 is a record, 3 is a record. So the first field that we want to edit field, is this primary field, and this is a field that is like the unique ID of every single record. So I'll actually change this to user ID, and I'll leave it as single line text. And so you'll want to delete this notes field. I'll just go ahead and delete that. And I'll also delete the assignee field over here. But for the status field, just edit it. And instead of to do in progress or done, change the status to qualified, because we shall be able to group users shortly by whether they are unqualified or not. And then over here, we shall have undecided. And you can save that. So yeah, I'll start by deleting attachments. So I'll delete this, and I'll also delete, just go ahead and delete that. And I'll also delete this dependency field. And the last field that I'll add is the transcript. So the actual conversation transcript. So first we have to actually select a field name type. So long text, and then go with transcript. There we go. So this will store the conversations that are happening in our AI chatbot. But we also need to have a table to store the leads that are coming in from our AI chatbot. So over here, I shall put leads, and it will automatically change each record to a lead. First of all, I will have their name over here as the key field. I will keep the notes field over here. I will change the status just to make it easier, and you'll see why this matters shortly. And so I'll add these status options: inbound, followed up, booked, and cancelled. So depending on if the lead comes, the inbound, and then if you follow up the lead, and if you book a session, or if you cancel, if the session has been canceled. So I'll just go ahead and save that, and you just need to customize this to fit the business. But I'll explain to you why this matters very shortly. You'll see it in action very shortly. I'll save that as the status, and I'll move it probably closer to the name over there. I'll also keep any notes about the person. And then over here, we'll also add information related to the actual person. So I'll add, for example, let me start by deleting these 2 fields. So delete that, and I'll also go ahead and delete that as well. And then we shall add, first of all, the person's city. So I'll go ahead and add single line text, and then I'll have city. And then we'll also have their phone. So let me just have single line text again, phone number. So remember, this is all similar to the variables that are inside the Botpress chatbot, because it will pass on the data from Botpress to here. So single line text, and I'll add email and create that as well. And then I'll move the notes field to the very end in case you want to add a few notes about that customer. Now, the really cool thing I love about Airtable, it's basically like Google Sheets. We could do this in Google Sheets, but Airtable is kind of like Google Sheets on steroids, because you have access to, number one, AI features to allow you to ask questions about your data, such as like which customers are inbound, which customers are followed up, etc., which you can do using this circle over here. So the business would be able to come in here and just ask Omni, Airtable's AI stuff, questions about the data. And then another thing is you can add automations and interfaces and forms, which I'll get to that later on. But my favorite part of at least building for businesses is you can create views. And what I'll do is I'll create a Kanban view of this data, and I'll just call it main view. And that's when things become really cool. Create new view, and you want to select stack by status. And suddenly you have this really cool dashboard that allows you to stack leads by their status. So when a lead comes from Botpress, they might be over here, and their name will be maybe Inokomunu, city, Kampala, phone number 256, blah, blah, blah. I'll just add a bunch of filler text here and filler text here. And now suddenly you can see the different leads inside your business. In fact, I'll change these from hidden. So I'll change this to, I'll unhide this field as well. And I'll also unhide that field. Come over here, I'll add a new field, and I'll say budget, single line text. And I'll also add another field, and I'll say project size. And I'll add that text there as well. And suddenly you have these cards that represent customers. This makes it very easy for the business you've built an AI chatbot for, because if I duplicate this, you can see all of their leads from Botpress would land over here. So they just have to log into this database, view it as is, and then, for example, they would have to call Inokomunu, follow up with him. When they followed up, they just drag him to the next stage. And essentially in that way, they can kind of mark and follow up on all of their customers, and then also organize their customers' data and know where each customer is across the different stages. So it's really cool. And once again, like I said, this is what businesses are willing to pay for, not only the AI chatbot, but for like a proper system to organize the data from the chatbot and basically help them do their job faster and better. So we shall connect this to Botpress very shortly so that it automatically puts leads here for us. Then coming into the conversations table, I shall add one more field, and this field is going to be the created time. So this will just tell us what time this lead entered the database. And the reason this is useful is so that we can create an interface that allows the business to understand when different leads are coming in, when different conversations are happening, etc. So for the field name over here, I'll just go ahead and call it conversation time, and create a time over here. We can change the format to 24-hour. I think I'll leave it on 12-hour right now, and the date format as well, and we can create that. So you can see if you create a new record, for example, here you'll see it will tell you this was created on the 20th of July 2026 at 5:02 p.m. etc. But I'll go ahead and actually delete all of these records. And just like that, you basically finish setting up the Airtable database for your AI chatbot. Now, if you come back into the plan, you can see we're supposed to send data to Airtable and mark them as like ready for follow-up or like inbound, so that the business can follow up and call the person. And we also need to set up an Airtable automation to alert the business when a new person enters. So head over into the leads table and then select automations. And what you want to do is add a trigger. So add a trigger when a record is created, and you want to select the table. The table is leads. And the next step is we want to send an email. So select send email under Gmail, and the description is send notification to business, to essentially tell the business that a new lead has come into their system. For the Gmail account, you need to connect a new Gmail account. Just go ahead and select create new Gmail account and log into your Gmail account that is already here. Ideally, if you're building this for a business, you should have access to the Gmail account, or when you build the Airtable system, build it with them or create the template and then send it to them and walk them through this process so that they log into their Gmail from here. And then from here, you can just add the email that you want to send the notification to. So I've added an email here, and the subject, I'll just say new lead. There's a few things you might want to add. So start by adding clicking this add icon in the top, and add first of all their name, and also you want to add the city and maybe their email, just like that. And then over here, say for the message, just go and say a new lead has just come into the system. And then over here, you can just say name, add a colon, say that. I'll skip over there, say city, say that, skip over there, email, and say that. And then I'll just say something like, click, visit the Airtable dashboard to take action on them now. And that's literally it. So you can generate a preview to test out this step. Just select generate a preview. It should bring up the leads in your database. Select the demo lead that you've just created, and it should send an email to them that looks like this. Email sent to info@ivyflowai.com, subject new lead. A new lead has just come into the system, blah blah blah. So we've basically set up the notification system to notify the business when a new lead comes in. But now we need to actually connect Botpress to this so that it can input new leads here. So first of all, come into Botpress, and you want to start by adding an integration. So head into the integration hub and search for Airtable. You should be able to find it down here. Just click on it and install the integration to your AI chatbot. You basically will not need to have any plan for this. This is available on the free plan on both Botpress and Airtable. So after a few seconds, it should be installed. Make sure that you're logged into Airtable in the same browser where you're building your AI chatbot, where your AI Botpress Studio is open. And once you've done that, you can then connect with OAuth, which will make connecting to Airtable very simple. It should bring up a pop-up that looks like this. Select connect with OAuth, hit submit, and then it should take you to a page like this. Give it access to everything. This is basically giving Botpress access to the Airtable integration. And then lastly, you want to select the correct base. So you can see my base is called landscape chatbot data. So that's this over here. Submit. And then from there, it should essentially be connected. Authentication successful. So that tells you it's connected successfully to Botpress, and it should close after a few seconds. There we go, and connected down here. So you can then close and click out of this. So that basically tells you Botpress can now talk to Airtable. And this is the process you would want to take your clients through. So there's multiple ways to do this. You can either set up like a video and then get them to walk through this process of connecting their chatbot to Airtable, or you can get like their logins to their accounts, which I think is the most efficient way, and you just connect it for them. So there's very many ways to get this done, but I found that's probably the quickest way to do it. So you just ask them for the logins to their Airtable account and to their Botpress account where you put the AI chatbot. And then once you're done building, or once you reach the stage in the build and you also reach the stage where you're ready to connect Botpress to Airtable, you just log into their account and then connect it. All right, so this next step is basically sending the data into Airtable, and the way we shall do this is inside this data sending workflow. We created a send data node up here for when they say yes to sending their data. And in here, you want to start by adding a card and add execute code. Now, execute code cards are cards that allow you to basically put in JavaScript code, and it will run whatever code is inside here. And you can actually think of this as like the most basic card in Botpress, because when we look at all the other cards over here that you can have, all of these are literally just execute code cards, except they've already built the code for you. So for example, in this card, they've already built the code to wait for an input from a user and to make it be a number. And let's see another one in this card over here, they've already built the code for you to generate content using the Grok model. But when you have a basic execute code card, it's basically now the most basic Botpress card, and now in here you can put in your own JavaScript code to get it to do things for you. In this case, we shall just be using it to build an array, and inside that array we shall put in data that we want to send to Airtable. And you can think of an array as like a package that we are going to pack data into, like a box. And when we put our data into that, we'll just seal it, wrap it up, and then we'll mail it to Airtable, which will receive it, rip it open, and be able to view the data that is inside here. So basically you want to input the following code over here. So just input workflow.data equals, and then you want to literally copy all of this exactly as it is and paste it in. Now you can do this by pausing the video and then just typing everything, but literally every single character, including the commas and the spaces, have to be exact, otherwise this code will not work to build the data array. So I'd really just recommend that you go ahead and get the prompt document that I've been talking about for like the whole video, because I'll also put this code inside there, and so you'll just be able to copy paste it directly and put it in there. So go ahead and get that. It's in the video description below. But we're basically storing all of this data in an array, and then we are putting that array in the workflow.data variable. But you can see there's an error because you can see the red underline because we haven't created the workflow.data variable yet. So let's go ahead and do that. So select new variable over here, select scope as workflow, but the type you want to change that to array and change it to an array of options. And once you've done that, just change the name to data and go ahead and enter that, and you should see that it should work now. So if I click on this, there should be no error over here anymore. And then what you want to do is now add a card and search for the Airtable create record card over here. Click on that, and for the table ID or name, we want to make sure the table name is exactly the same as this one over here. So this table name is leads. So over here, I'm going to come and type in leads, or you can put in the table ID, which by the way, you can find by clicking on the URL, and your table ID will be this one over here, TBL, and then the text before the next slash. But I've put in the table name because that's a little easier. And then all I have to do is input the data that I want to send. Now you can use this format over here to input data, but I found that if you've already built the the array, the data array, which we have over here, all you have to do is input this variable into the card, the create record card, which I found is easier to do. So on the fields tab, all you have to do is change it to variable by clicking on this X to allow you to input a variable, and then you want to go with 2 curly brackets and then type in workflow.data, and it should tell you that that is an array over here, and that's how you know you've done the right thing. You might get this error message over here, but don't worry about that, it will go through. And in fact, let's just go ahead and test it now. Alright, so I've just run it and I've seen the data has come in through here. Enoch Omunu, my city, my phone number, email, budget, and my project size, and then the person would be able to also automatically select a status. But in fact, what we should do in Airtable is come into this, and if we edit this status field, we want to set the default to inbound so that all new leads come into the inbound section, just like that over here, so that they'll look like this, and then from then on the business will automatically be able to move them to the next stage. Coming back into Botpress, what you want to do is, as soon as it has created the record, which is it has managed to do, let's just output a text to the user to let them know. So I'll just say great, someone from our team will reach out to you to book your visit shortly, and then I'll just say have a nice day. Or I'll just end it there since we're going to autonomous conversation. So I'll exit just like that, and then coming back into main, that will mean the user will exit from here, but instead of ending the conversation, we want to transition to autonomous conversation over here. So I will create a new node and just change this to autonomous convo, and then in here I will just add the autonomous conversation logic card, and then let's just finish off by connecting it to the end. And just like that, we are done with building your AI chatbot in Botpress. So you can see we have the main workflow, and then we have 4 other workflows over here, and those all work perfectly, and we shall test them later on. So coming back into our plan over here in Freeform, you can see that we've done part 1, part 2, part 3, and part 4. And if we come down into the steps, we can then go ahead and tick part 4 as done. So you can see how easy it is to walk through a project for a client when you have like a proper plan set up. And not only is it easy for you, but it's also easier for the client to track where you are at the different times, and they can check up on you, or you can just keep updating them and letting them know, now we're doing this, now we're working on this, etc. So yeah, now that we've done up to step 6, we need to move on to step 7, which is setting up the personality and the language detector. Now, to create your AI chatbot's personality, you want to start by coming into like ChatGPT, and essentially ChatGPT will help you develop the prompt. So just input this text over here. Tell it to generate a short 100-word prompt with example vocabulary for an AI chatbot's personality, and tell it should have these traits, and then paste in the traits that you want your AI chatbot to have, and then you can go ahead and send that through. Now it has generated a prompt, so we can just go ahead and copy that, come into Botpress, and remember where we went into agents at the beginning of this video. Yeah, we're heading back there, and then you just want to select personality agent, and now is the time to enable it. And then you want to paste in your personality description from ChatGPT. You can also write this yourself if you want to, but I usually do this because it saves time. And ChatGPT is also slightly better at prompt engineering than us regular people are. So yeah, that's kind of why I use it most of the time. But you can also go ahead and like add to it or remove stuff from it, which I will actually do. So I will say prioritize speed, simplicity, usefulness, and precision. Do not send overly long messages. So let me say more than 30 words to the user. Text like you are on Instagram. And that should be good enough. And then you can also go ahead and select the model that it will use to handle the bot's personality. I recommend that you use the fast model, so you can just leave this on Gemini 2.5 Flash, our default fast model. And once that is done, you can click out of this. And now as a result, what will happen is it will kind of rewrite messages when it sends them to people, but essentially it will rewrite them to fit that personality. But there's a few messages we don't want to be rewritten. So for example, if I come into the collect info workflow, I wouldn't want it to rewrite this message, may I please get your full name, phone number, email, and city, which it likely will do. So what I'll do is I'll scroll down over here to advanced settings, and then I'll just disable the personality agent. So you can see it down here, click onto that, and you can turn that off for this node. I also don't want it to change these text fields over here. Great, someone from our team will reach out to you, or this text field over here. So I'll also do the same, come into that node, click onto it, and turn off the personality agent. And for this one up here, come into that, turn off the personality agent as well. So you can basically go through your AI chatbot and turn off the personality agent for sections where you probably have text cards and you've written the message yourself and you don't want it to change anything about what you've said. Otherwise, the personality agent will rewrite the message before it sends it to the user, just to make sure that it fits the personality you've set. So I'll just go ahead and publish this once we're done to save the latest version. For the actual language detector, just come into the translator agent, click onto that, and make sure everything here is enabled. So the agent should be enabled. It should be able to detect the initial user language, and it should also be able to detect when the user changes language anytime in the middle of a conversation, and then adjust and respond to the user in the correct language. And you want to pick a model to use for translation. GPT is pretty good for this, so I'm gonna go ahead and select GPT-5 in case someone changes their language, and then we can go ahead and actually test it. So I'll just go into Google Translate. So I'll go ahead into Google Translate and I'll just put in a message in English saying, what are the best ways to maintain a lawn? And you'll see it's produced a response. So I'll just copy that over here and I'll paste that message in French as my first message, and it should respond in French to this as well. So let's just give it a second. And I can see it has actually responded in French to these, and the rest of the conversation will proceed to be in French. So it will rewrite every message from now on to be in French unless I change back to English by typing a message to it in English. And yeah, so that's that part done of the build. Now, before you continue, I actually forgot to add the introduction after answering the user's question. So let's go ahead and do that now in Botpress. So after answering the user's question here, we'll just add a simple text card and say something like, hi, my name is James. I'm an AI chatbot for, and then just have the company name over here. And the reason we give the AI chatbot a name is just to kind of bring it down to the level of like a human and make the conversation later on feel a little bit more like actually talking to someone, because now you actually even know their name. So if I come back into our plan, we can then go ahead and tick this as done. And then we can move on to step number 8, where we set up the follow-up for leads who ghost in the middle of qualifying or collecting information. So if you go through this plan, you'll actually realize that the only time that it would be acceptable for the user to ghost the AI chatbot, or for it to like not reply to it, is if they are in autonomous conversation, because at that point they're just talking. It's kind of like talking to ChatGPT. So ChatGPT says something, you understand it, and then you just leave the conversation. But anywhere else in this process, we want the user to get like a follow-up message like, hey, did you see my message? Are you going to reply? If they don't respond within a certain time period. So let's go ahead and do that now. The first thing you want to do is just come into bot settings, and you can change the inactivity timeout of your chatbot, and this will be the amount of time that it will wait for, or to wait for a user's message before it ends the conversation or before it begins the timeout. And the timeout is what we shall use to trigger it to send a reminder to the user. So just change this to whatever you want it to be. I'll leave that on 30, but once you've done that, you can then come over into timeout, this workflow over here, and you can see when conversations time out, it will automatically send the person through here before it sends them to the end of the conversation. Just delete the standard node that should be here, and then this is where we shall build the trigger that will send a reminder to people in case they like ghost the AI chatbot. So after you deleted this node over here, you want to start by creating a user variable called last workflow. So new variable last workflow, and then just change that to user and enter. And once you've done that, we're then gonna go into all of these workflows and tell the AI chatbot the last workflow that the user was in before the conversation ended. So what we shall do is we shall add a card to fill in this variable last workflow in every workflow that the user enters. So whenever they enter the main workflow, I'll add an execute code card, and let's input last user.last workflow is equal to main. So just input that piece of code over there, or go ahead and copy this from the prompt document, and then we'll copy this card and we'll come into the autonomous conversation, and I will also add a standard node in between here before it flows to autonomous conversation, and I will change that, and I will then paste the card over there, except I will change the workflow name to autonomous underscore convo, because this is the last workflow the user was in if they enter here. And it's the same for the collect info workflow. As soon as they enter into the collect info workflow, the last workflow that they were in is the collect info workflow. So I'll go ahead and do the same, paste that card, and change this to collect info. And then I'll also do the same for the data sending and the qualifying workflows as well. So this one already has a node, but I'll still add, a standard node at the beginning over here. Paste in this card, paste card, and then change this one to data sending. And then we can close that, and I believe the last one is qualifying. So come over here and add a node at the beginning, and I'll change the name, the data in this card, the execute code card that I'm going to paste here, to qualifying. So paste card, change the data over here to qualifying. There we go. Now essentially it will fill up the user variable last workflow as the conversation goes along. Now what we want to do is come into the timeout. So what we wanted to do at this point is to check which workflow the user was last in, so that it can essentially remind them to respond. If they don't respond, then it will essentially end the conversation after a certain period of time. But if they do respond, it will send them back into the workflow where they were in so that they can continue the conversation. So we want to start by editing these expression cards here to send the user to the right place. So right now there's only 2 outputs, but I'll change this one. I'll remove the AI features and I'll change it to user dot I believe it was last workflow, and I'll change that to equals. If it's equal to autonomous, then it should not send them anywhere, but it should just go ahead and end the conversation. But I'll duplicate this over here and I'll paste that card there. Let me paste it a couple times because we will edit it. If it's equal to collect info, that means the user goes to the AI chatbot while it was in the middle of collecting their information. Therefore, we want to send the user a message saying, we just want to send them a message saying, hey, you didn't give me all your info, still there. And then from there, we just want to wait for an input from the user. And after waiting for that input, if they do respond, we should proceed and send them back to the collect info workflow to finish collecting their info. So I'll send them back over there. But in the case that they also don't respond to this message, they also ghost this, we want it to time out again. But if it times out again, remember the variable last workflow is still filled with the collect info with a text collect underscore info. So it will just keep running through here and looping through here, which will get annoying for the user. They'll essentially get spammed with the same message every 30 minutes. So what we want to do is we want to add a card here, an execute code card. And what we wanted to do is just clear the last workflow variable. So user.last workflow, and we'll just change that to is equal to empty. So what that will do is when it has finished running the user through this first section, if they leave it on red again because it has changed last workflow to empty, then it will just end the conversation. So in fact, what now we'll do is we'll right click and add end, a second end node, and we'll connect it to the default over here. So in case the user is not autonomous, collect info, data sending, or qualifying, then it will automatically end the conversation because the user must then be in blank, meaning they have gone through here already and then the variable was cleared. So that's essentially the process that it will follow. And I do understand that this might not make perfect sense right now, especially if you're new to Botpress, because I have been building on Botpress for quite a while, but it will make sense shortly. Just follow exactly what I've done over here, including the code that I've put into this, and your AI chatbot will work fine perfectly, and then you can kind of dig in to understand how it actually works later on. So then we shall add one for if the user is from the info workflow, from the data sending workflow. So come over here and I'll change this from autonomous to data sending. And if they're in the data sending workflow, remember the only question we ask them in this workflow, the only point where we wait for their input is this part over here where we say, do you want to, can I send your contact info to our staff now so they can reach out to you to book a site visit? So essentially what we'll do is we'll come back over here to the timeout and we'll say something like, hey, you didn't respond to my message earlier question. And that message will remind the user to respond to what the bot had asked earlier about if it can send their data to the office. And then we'll just copy the wait for user input card, paste that here, and also copy the execute code card and paste that there as well. And then from there, if they do reply to the message, then we will send them over here back into the data sending workflow to go through it again. But if not, then it will just end the conversation automatically by setting their the user.last workflow to blank, which then it will come back and try later and find that it's blank and automatically end. But actually, I've just realized you need to move these execute code cards to the top. I forgot to do that because, like I said, it works through these sequentially. So it starts with the one at the top and then works through all the way to the bottom. But if you put it at the bottom, it might never reach there because the user might never respond if it's waiting for the user's input. So you would still get that loop. So just please make sure that you put these execute code cards at the top. That's my mistake from earlier. But yeah, that's the correction made. And then we'll just duplicate this over here. So copy node, paste node down there, and we'll now connect the last one, which I believe was qualifying. So I'll edit that and change the name to qualifying. And then down here, the question that we'll ask, we'll just leave it as, hey, you didn't respond to my earlier question as well. And then it will wait for the user's input. If the user has no input to make, it will automatically end after already changing the last workflow to blank, meaning the conversation will end. So standard node here, in case they do actually respond, we want to send them back into qualifying. There we go. All right, and now the last thing you have to do is actually help people continue the conversation after they have been essentially pulled back into it by the reminder from the AI chatbot. So if you come back into the main workflow, you can see that after someone going through qualifying, they need to go, through collect info, they need to go through qualifying, data sending, and then finally to autonomous conversation. So what I'll do is I'll replicate that journey over here. So I'll add standard node, and in there I will essentially put, after collect info, they would go into qualifying. Then from qualifying, they would go into back into main, data sending, and then autonomous conversation. So coming back through here, so qualifying, data sending, and then autonomous conversation. Just like that, then the user would flow in here and then go through all of these after collecting their info. And if it's data sending, all they have left to do is autonomous conversation. So I'll actually just add that card down here. So data sending and then autonomous conversation. But if it is qualifying, then the remaining cards that they have left are data sending and then autonomous conversation. So I'll copy that card, paste that card there, and also copy autonomous node and paste that card there. And then once you've done that, you've essentially finished building this section that follows up with users and brings them back into the conversation in case they drop off. And so we can come in here and add done as well. And we have 1, 2, 3 steps left. So I'll go ahead and move on to step 9, setting up Airtable conversation logging. Now start by coming into conversations in the Airtable, come into the conversations table, and we'll change actually user ID to conversation ID, and that way it stores the ID of the conversation that the user is currently in. And the reason for this is because users may have multiple conversations, so one user might have multiple conversations, and so it's better that this is conversation ID. I'm sorry I made you input user ID earlier, that was my bad, but if you are just using the template, copying the template, you should already have this as perfect, so you don't have to change anything there. That should be already fine. And by the way, if you click on this status one, you should see, if I go ahead, click on it and edit field, there's 3 statuses: qualified, unqualified, or undecided. So we want to input this data in Botpress so that it's able to know when someone is qualified, unqualified, or undecided. So come back into your Botpress AI chatbot and we shall add a new variable, but this time it shall be a conversation variable. So that's the only conversation variable that we'll touch in this build. But yeah, conversation variable, and we'll leave it as a string, and I'll just call it status. So conversation.status. Now, if the user is in the qualifying workflow and they get to this part over here where it says we'd love to work with you, that means they're qualified. So I would add a card, execute code card, and we shall basically change the status of the conversation status variable. So conversation.status, and I'll change that to qualified. And then I'll copy this card, and if they come down here and it says sorry, we don't work with businesses like yours, or if it comes down from this side, either we'll also want it to name them as unqualified. So I'll actually paste the card here, but I'll move it to the top, and then I'll go ahead and change this to unqualified. And then lastly, undecided, that's the one that it should just be on by default for all conversations. So what I'll do is I'll come into Airtable and I'll hit the status edit field, and I'll change the default to undecided, and I'll actually change that to something like blue, and then qualified will be green, unqualified will be red, and we can save that. Now come into the conversation end workflow over here. Every time a conversation is ending, this is when we shall log data to Airtable. Now the next thing that you want to do at this point is add a execute code card. So once you've come into the execute code card, make sure that you paste in this following code. You can once again just go ahead and copy this by pausing the video and copying it, or just copy it from the prompt document in the description. But yeah, once you've done that, you can then exit out of this. And once you have that code in, you can click out of this, and we need to remove that red line by creating the workflow.data variable. So new variable, let's just call it data workflow, change it to array and make it an option. So anytime you're sending data to Airtable and you're first packing it into an array, make sure that the variable that you create for that array is an array variable and options. Once that's done, you can just select enter, and then we shall add the create record card from Airtable, change this to variable and input workflow.data, and then the table ID, we shall change that to conversations, because the name of the table over here is conversations. So table ID or table name, but I've gone with the table name, conversations, and it should add the user over there. And then we can actually come into the main workflow to try and test that this conversation end feature works, and it actually logs the conversation to Airtable. So just come in here and connect a random standard node, add a random text message, and then right click to create an end node and automatically connect it to the end. And that will flow the conversation to the end immediately when you start. So if I start a new conversation, it will automatically flow it to the end immediately, and you'll see the conversation ended. And when you go into Airtable, in the conversations table, you should now see that it has logged a new conversation, and the status is undecided. The conversation ID is conversation 42, and then the transcript, you'll literally just see user said hi, the bot said hi, because that's literally all that happened here before the conversation ended. But that's how you know it works. And then you can just go ahead and reconnect your workflow to the right place and delete this little mess that we've created here, just like that. And you can be sure that your data logging to Airtable now actually works, which happens at the end of every conversation in this workflow. And so we're literally almost done. We only have two more steps to go actually. So I'll just mark this as done. And then we shall move on to step number 10, setting up the Airtable dashboard for business, and step number 11, where I'll walk you through the testing sequence, plus how you can connect it to Instagram. Alright, so for the Airtable dashboard, you want to head back into your Airtable account and come into interfaces. And if you're wondering why we're building this, it's because the 10th must do that we have over there is it should show a full summary and dashboard of conversations for the business. So essentially we want to build something similar to this so that the business can come in here and essentially have a data breakdown of all the stuff that's happening inside their chatbots, be able to see conversations, see graphs, and other data like that. So just go ahead and click build it by yourself, and we'll go ahead and build an interface, and I'll just call this landscaping chatbot. And I don't know, I'll pick a nice icon. I kind of like this one. So at this point where it tells you to pick a layout, you want to scroll down and select dashboard, and then just go with next. And the table we want to use is conversations. Let's start with doing the conversations table. So you can finish that. And you can see basically this is the only thing we have in our dashboard, conversations. There's only 2 conversations. But let's say we want to add something down here. All you have to do is click this little add icon at the very bottom, and we can go ahead and add like a line chart, for example. And then you might get this prompt to allow users to see the underlying records. This is basically asking whether the people who are viewing the dashboard should be able to see the actual data that's like making up the dashboard. So like the individual like rows, and you want to click allow. And now for this graph that we've just created, this line graph over here, if we click into it, we can first of all give it a title. So I'll click out of this first, and then I'll click this. So you can see we're on it right now, and the title you'll just give it is conversations, and I'll say number of conversations by day perhaps. And then the data is the conversations, but on the x-axis we want to change the sort by value, and we want to change the field to the conversation time, and we can change it from minutes of the day to perhaps day. There we go. So now what will happen is, as people have different conversations, as your AI chatbot is live and users begin to converse with it like across different days, you'll see, for example, 20th of July here, 21st of July here, 22nd of July, and then it will begin to form the line chart so that you can see how the data is changing as like each day passes, and the business owner can see, we had a spike in conversations in this day. Maybe it's because we were running a really good ad into the chatbot. We had a spike in a dip in conversations on this other day, and it might have been because something else happened. And so perhaps another graph I like to add, which by the way, you can organize this whichever way you like, but I like to add like sometimes graphs next to each other, and I like to have a pie chart. So now there's two here, and in this pie chart, I'll just call this conversation times, not even times, let's just go with status, conversation status. And over here we shall go ahead and change the categories. It's already on status. So now what happens here is it basically splits, it shows you a breakdown using a pie chart of the different statuses of everyone who has had a conversation with your AI chatbot. So now the business owner can know by looking at this dashboard that 60% of people who chat with it are unqualified. In this case, all of them are undecided. But if you come into data and I change one of these people, for example, to qualified, and then we go back into interfaces, you'll see that now it's 50% are qualified, 50 are undecided, because we only have two data points, two rows. And I can change this to total all-time conversations. And now, so now we have that. And then you can see also here we have another breakdown, which is basically, this graph is basically the same as this one, but I kind of just like the pie chart better. So I might go ahead and decide to maybe delete this and just have the pie chart. And then you can kind of play around with this dashboard until you get what you like. Another thing that I like to add over here is let me add another group. And down here, I'll change this to the conversations table. And over here, I want to add a list. And in this list, we want to just put the conversations. So you can see it has done that. But if I scroll up, you can actually sort them by perhaps the date that they came in, or you might change this prefix field to something else, etc. But I like to have this down here just so that they can see all conversations. And what this will mean is that they can actually click a conversation like this, and it will essentially allow them to open it and be able to see the transcript. So they'll be able to read the actual transcript over here. So people looking at the dashboard can just click a random conversation, a business owner can click through, and they'll be able to see the transcript of that conversation. So you can play around with this until you get what you like. And that's kind of what it will look like over here. But then you can also add another part to your interface. So if you come over here and you select add, and you want to add a different page, let's go with the dashboard as well. And I'll just select next. And instead I want to use now the leads table. So I'll go ahead and click that and finish. Great, now it started us off like it did in the last one. Over here now we have the total amount of leads. I'll actually rename this to leads dashboard. And then this other dashboard, I'll call it conversations. And then in this leads one, perhaps I want to add another group, add another table or line chart, and I'll go with let's go with a bar chart this time. And perhaps we want to change it, instead of by status, let's go ahead and put something like project size, perhaps. And then we can essentially now see different project sizes. So people, right now we only have one person with a 350 meter squared project size, but as more people join, actually we have two people, but as more people join, then you might see over here 1000 meter squared project size, maybe 200 meter squared project size. Another landscaping company will be able to look at this data and analyze it and go, oh, okay, look, the majority of the people who are booking with us have a project size of 500 meters squared. So maybe they might have a special offer for that, or they might change something like that, or they might notice, during a certain season of the year, maybe summer, the majority of people want to terraform maybe like their lawn or something like that, and then they go ahead and book, and they have a project size of maybe 75 meters squared. So the whole point of this is to just be able to show data that your AI chatbot is collecting to the business and make that data valuable so that they can actually use it to make decisions. And the whole essence of that is that you will not be able to know what kind of the data the business needs just by, you can't just guess your way through it in like the same way that I have right now. I mean, you can kind of make an estimate of what they want, but I found the best way to do it is literally just talk to the business owner, ask them what kind of data. This is the data that the AI chatbot like collects, like put all of the data on the table, tell them it gets their name, phone numbers, email, etc., and then tell them what kind of data would you be looking for to help you make better decisions. And they might tell you, you want to know the average amount of project size that people are booking have, or they want to know perhaps maybe the average budget that people are booking. And then once they tell you the data they're looking for, then you build the dashboard accordingly to display that data to them. So you don't start with your own guesses and then build a dashboard based on your assumptions, but instead you start with what the business actually wants, and then you build a dashboard based on that. And once you're done, you essentially want to give the business owner access to this. So first of all, make sure this Airtable account is owned by the business, and then you can just go ahead and publish this. And once you've published it, it should look something like this. So this is what the person would see, the business owner would see when they log into their dashboard. And that way they never have to even enter like this messy section of the database where all the data is, but literally they're just not stuck, but they have this amazing interface that they can refer to whenever they want. You can click launch to also get inside and view all the data about their AI chatbot and the people that it's bringing into the business. This kind of thing is what makes your AI chatbot worth way more, because then the business owner actually feels like they understand it, they feel like they own it, and it feels like it's actually a part of their business, and they can actually use it to do more than just talk to leads and customers, but it actually helps them make better business decisions. And by the way, they can also download the Airtable app on their phone or iPad or whichever other device the business owner uses, or the other members of their business, and be able to access this same dashboard and data. So you can see I have it over here, and I can essentially see the same data that's over here, and it updates as soon as data here is updated as well. And the AI is also down here in the corner, so I can go ahead and ask questions about my data, and that's here as well. So they can access it on other devices as well, other than their laptop, allowing them to basically have the ability to track what's happening inside their AI chatbot even when they're on the go. How cool is that? All right, so go ahead and play around with Airtable until you get what you want. And when you do have that, you can then kind of mark this step as done. Now let me walk you through my testing sequence and connect this AI chatbot to Instagram. Let's start by connecting it to Instagram. Head back into your Botpress studio, and then also make sure that you're logged into the business Instagram account in the same browser that the Botpress studio is open in. So my Botpress studio is here, and I should have logged into my business account in this browser over here. And once you've done that, you can then go ahead and begin connecting it to Instagram. So it's very simple to do that actually. Come into the integration hub and search for Instagram. And when you find it over here, you can just go ahead and install it to your studio. Once it's installed, all you have to do is connect with Auth. And if you're logged into your business Instagram account in this browser, it should be very, very straightforward from here. You basically just have to follow the prompts and select allow a bunch of times. I only have to do that once, I believe, because I've connected it before. And it should say confirmed, authentication successful. And just like that, it will be connected to Instagram. Great, so it says connected over here, and I'll actually go ahead and test that out. And now to test it, just send a message to that account on a different Instagram account. So I've gone ahead and done the same, and you can basically see I've had a conversation with it, basically walking through the exact workflow that we've built in the AI chatbot. That's kind of how you know that the Instagram integration works. But now let's move to the next stage, which is actually testing it properly. Now, there's a multitude of ways to test your Botpress AI chatbot, but my favorite is what I call branch testing. You see, if you want to make sure your AI chatbot is perfect, you just basically have to walk through all the parts where it could possibly fail and then fix them. It's kind of like if you have like a bunch of water bottles and you want to know that all of them don't have any leaks, just put water in them, like actually do the thing they're supposed to do, and then make sure it doesn't work, and do that for all of them, and then you can be certain that they're all perfect. And it's the same thing with your AI chatbot. So what we'll do is we'll go through each and every single workflow, each and every single possible path and branch that a user can take, And whenever it fails, we pick up on an error and then we fix it, or maybe the AI chatbot doesn't respond in the right way, or perhaps it gets to a point such as this one over here in qualifying, and instead of sending the user up to path number 1, it sends them down to path number 2. Then you might need to edit the prompt here a little bit to make it perfect. So that's exactly how I do my testing. So for example, I'll start with the main workflow, and in this main workflow there's pretty much 2 paths that can be taken. The person can either flow up here and then all the way through, or they can flow down and then all the way through. So I would test that, and once you've done that, I'd have finished testing the main. Then I would move to autonomous conversation. It only has 1 path, so you just test this and you go fully through. And then the next one, collecting info, same thing, test this part, go fully through. And then the next one, you can see there's a few other branches here, 1, 2, so you'd want to test every single branch. And it is a little tedious, that's true, but remember, this is what the business is paying you so much to do. It's not just about building an AI chatbot, but actually testing it and making sure it's perfect. And I'll be honest with you, even if you do fully test this, when it's finally deployed, you will probably still find some errors when like real people actually start talking to it. So testing doesn't end after you deliver the AI chatbot. That's a myth. It really just never ends. Like, you have to continuously keep testing your AI chatbot. Maybe you add a new feature, maybe you remove a feature. Just keep monitoring conversations and help it improve. And it's actually why on my website, when I explain the process to getting an AI chatbot installed for a business, the 4th step is launching and optimizing, where we collect the knowledge that your AI chatbot needs to function. We deploy it to the channels that your employees and customers already use, and then spend the next 2 months fine-tuning it for you. That's the key part. You really want to be doing this for your clients as well. You can maybe charge them a maintenance fee if you really want to do it, but I found that it's just better to do it for free and kind of give it as a bonus. So like, it's basically 2 months of free maintenance where you're fine-tuning the AI chatbot and actually adjusting it. So think of those 2 months as also part of the build process. And it's not like you're going to be working on the AI chatbot every day, so don't expect it to take a lot of time. But perhaps every 2 weeks, every week, you sit down for an hour and go through all the conversations, the real conversations that what you've built, the AI chatbot that you've built has had for the business, and then you analyze them to find the gaps in knowledge, the issues, the errors, the weird things that it says, and then you correct it or improve it. That's what that part is for. So that's what my testing sequence is like. All right, now we come to like actually getting people to buy your AI chatbots. There's 2 ways to get people. Number 1, inbound or outbound. We'll start with outbound. Outbound is basically where you go out and try to find people, and inbound is when people just walk in and find you, basically. But with outbound, there's things you can do like cold email, cold calling, running ads, walking to businesses around you, like literally getting on your 2 feet and walking into a business, or warm outreach. But I found that essentially warm outreach is the best one to start with, because you can reach out to people who already know you. It's warm outreach because you're already kind of warmed up to these people, so like maybe a family friend, someone who lives on your street, who owns a business, etc. And then from there you can essentially get the first few clients for the AI chatbots that you're building. However, you also have to realize that as you do this, you need to essentially constantly keep doing this, because for example, if you're running ads, you need to constantly keep paying every single month to get those ads on Meta or Google. Or if you're doing cold calling, you have to constantly keep calling people. Otherwise, if you just wake up one month and you decide to call 0 people, you will get 0 inbound leads, 0 customers that month. But on inbound, which is kind of what I'm focused on right now, people walk into you, and the way they do this is by either searching for you or discovering you on platforms. I'd recommend that you start by picking a platform. I actually started on LinkedIn, but I'll be honest with you, the reason I switched over to YouTube is because on LinkedIn I realized that most of the people who consume content don't consume it for more than like 2.5 minutes. And you can see from the length of this video, the value that I want to give to people through tutorials can't really be given in just 2 minutes. That's literally impossible. And so as a result, I decided to go with inbound on YouTube and essentially produce tutorials for people on YouTube. But I did also make the mistake of starting with outbound. So I started by doing cold calling, and then I went to inbound, then I went back to outbound, and I just kept jumping between the two because I couldn't get any clients. And honestly, it will feel like you're doing the right thing, because you're like, essentially you try outbound for like 3 weeks and then you get nothing. You go to inbound, try that for 3 weeks, go back. But please do not do that. You would only end up not getting any clients at all. And that's exactly what happened to me for a long period of time. I believe it was like 6-8 months. And the reason for that is because you really just need to focus on one and stick to it for an extended period of time to see results. Yes, it will be painful. Yes, it will be boring. Yes, it will feel like you're not moving forward. But if you just stick to it for long enough, I'm sure you will get your first client or customer. And with inbound, my current strategy is, like I said, I'm already on YouTube, but I am trying to produce, number one, valuable content. So content that shows your expertise, shows you're actually good at something. For me, I found that tutorials are the best videos that I produce that do that, because they essentially allow people to watch them and think, okay, this guy really knows his stuff when it comes to building AI chatbots. But then also you want to produce content that builds trust with people. And the reason you want to build trust is because no one will really ever, okay, maybe very few people will watch a video of yours, like one video, and then instantly say, I want to pay this guy. But most people will usually watch a video and then go on and watch a second, and then maybe 2 weeks later watch a third, and then a fourth. And then that's when they'll have enough trust to reach out to you and get you to actually build something for their business. So that's the process of building trust, just continuously producing valuable videos. And I'm not a YouTube professional, so if you want to learn how to produce good YouTube content for your business, you want to check out Wes McDowell. I'll link his YouTube channel in my video description. He has helped me a ton. And also Callaway, his content has also been absolutely amazing in helping me produce good, valuable content on YouTube. But another formula that I'm following right now that you might want to follow is ANC: attract, nurture, convert. Attract is basically attracting people to actually find you. Like, no one is gonna know. I'm sure you didn't know who I was before you actually watched this video, right? But you were attracted. You maybe saw this on your homepage, on your feed. Maybe you searched for something and it came up. That's producing content to attract people to your channel and be like, oh, who's this guy? And then they watch you for a bit, and when they start watching you, you're now nurturing them. So maybe they watch one video, you've nurtured them a bit, you've built some trust, and then they watch a couple other videos, you've nurtured them more. And then the last thing that you have to do is actually convert them. So it's exactly why in all my videos you will find a link that says work with me, and then the link to book a call with my AI agency. And that's because you need to have a place where people can convert, where people can click through to either meet with you or to like learn more about what you offer, or to book a call with you, etc. That's how you convert people. And once you have those 3 steps set up, as long as you're producing valuable content, I'm very sure that you'll grow. At first, I was also very scared that YouTube was going to take a lot of time. I had to be a very good YouTuber, etc. But honestly, you just have to learn how to speak to a camera. It's really not that hard. You will look very nervous and very silly on your first few tries, and you will also feel very silly. But just realize that it's a process and you start from zero. And every single person that you see on YouTube, Mr. Beast, Iman Gachi, all the big guys, all also started from zero, just like you did. So start from zero, learn Botpress, learn AI, and then produce amazing content. And by the way, if you want to learn Botpress, you want to learn AI content, the best way to do so is by building stuff, like watching tutorials, following along and building. So I'd recommend that you watch this tutorial next, just so you can get more experience building on Botpress.